Welcome back to the Omnia Mea Compass podcast. There is a tool sitting on your desk or in your pocket right now that can think alongside you, draft for you, research for you, and help you do in an hour what used to take a day. And a lot of people are doing one of two things with it. They're either ignoring it entirely, waiting for the dust to settle and for someone to tell them it's safe to come out, and these people suffer from total AI overwhelm. Or they're handing their entire whole brain over to it, creating clones and agents left and right, abdicating work without counter-checking it, and letting it write their emails, their captions, speak for them entirely, without stopping to ask whether what goes out is accurate, whether it is helpful, whether it continues to sound anything like them at all. Neither of those is the answer. We are in the middle of a revolution, and AI is going to be part of our everyday lives in ways we cannot yet imagine very, very soon, in a shift not unlike the move from candlelight to electricity. But neither hiding from it nor throwing yourself and your entire life completely at it are wise responses, in my opinion. So today, we're finding the third option. Welcome back to the Omnia Mea Compass podcast, the show for founders who are building something real on their own terms with eyes wide open. I'm your host, Susan Platt, and in Season 3, we're opening a new chapter. Over the next 8 episodes, we're going to talk about something that is impossible to ignore right now, and that I think deserves a much more honest and grounded conversation than the one most of us are having. Yes, we're going to talk about AI, not the breathless hype version, and not the doom and gloom version either. We're going to talk about it the way we talk about everything on this podcast, with substance, with skepticism where it's earned, and with the genuine belief that you, a founder, a solopreneur, someone building something meaningful, deserve clear thinking and just not noise. I want to tell you where I'm coming from before we go any further, because context matters here. I spent the first decade of my life seriously ill. I had a severe and chronic case of agranulocytosis, which is a condition that left me with a dangerously compromised immune system, and it meant long stretches of isolation, away from other children and away from the ordinary texture of childhood. And I couldn't always go outside. I wore headscarves and long sleeves in the heat of summer, and I felt for a very long time alienated and different in the way that children feel different, which is to say, completely. What I had was books, and books, as anyone who has ever truly needed them will tell you, are not just stories. They are doors. They are windows into the worlds that exist in full, breathing detail on the other side of the page. Worlds you can enter entirely where the rules of your physical circumstances simply do not apply. I think of Tad Williams' Otherland series, which I have loved for such a long time, and Orlando Gardner, a teenager with progeria dying in the real world who lives an entirely different life inside a vast virtual reality network. And in that other world, he is Star Wars, strong, capable, heroic. The body that limits him in reality cannot follow him there. I understand Orlando in my bones, not because our conditions were the same, they weren't, but because I knew what it meant to find a world that had room for you when the physical one felt very small. But there's a thing about stories like Orlando's. What I was really reaching for every time I opened a page was not just escape, it was connection. Human beings are wired for it, not metaphorically, but neurologically. We are social creatures at the most fundamental level, built seeking meaning through relationship, through being seen, through recognizing ourselves in others. And stories, at their best, are the oldest tech we have for doing exactly that. They collapse the distance between one human experience and another. And what happened next as I grew up was that new kinds of doors appeared. In the early 90s, France became the first country to offer its citizens a mass network communication system, the Minitel. Long before the internet was in anyone's home, the French could type messages to each other, access information, reach across the distance between one person and another through a screen. It was modest by today's standards, but it was also extraordinary. Up in Switzerland, it was so miffed because here was this technology to connect so close, just one country away, and still out of my reach. But what the Minitel showed, what it proved, was that impulse to connect through technology is not a modern invention. It is just a very old hunger wearing new clothes. The fax machine had already started it. The Minitel accelerated it. The internet transformed it. And now here we are today with AI. AI to me feels like the next expression of the same impulse, a new kind of door, a new kind of world you can step into. And used well, it can genuinely help build bridges between you and the information you need, between you and the clarity that was buried under the noise, between you and the business you want to build, even in some ways between you and the people you are trying to reach. Because when AI frees up your time and your cognitive load, you have more of yourself available for the relationships that actually matter. But, and this is important, none of that happens automatically. AI is at its core a trained model. It reflects what has been put into it, human data, human choices, human values, and the absence of them, which means what comes out is shaped, at least in part, by what we collectively, individually put in. That is not a reason for despair. It is a reason for responsibility. And we are not passive recipients of whatever AI becomes. We are participants in shaping it. And that means doing the work on ourselves, growing our own thinking, our own ethics, our own clarity, so that what we feed into this technology and how we use it actually reflects who we want to be. So I consider myself an early adopter. I have been playing with AI tools from the very beginning, the early language models, the first writing assistants, the tools that were rough and limited and still fascinating. I've watched this evolve in real time and used it in my work at OmniMea since before it was fashionable to admit it. So what I shared today comes from genuine, extended, sometimes frustrating, but often illuminating direct experience, not from headlines. Today we're going to cover three things. First, we're going to reframe the whole AI conversation, because most of what you've heard is framed incorrectly. Second, we're going to look at what AI actually is and isn't, clearly and without mystification. And third, we're going to talk about where AI genuinely earns its place in the kind of work we do, and where it must not replace you. Are you ready? Let's go. Waypoint 1, the wrong question. So the conversation most people are having about AI is built around the wrong question. The wrong question is, will AI replace me? I understand why that question is everywhere. It's dramatic. It gets clicks. It makes for a good think piece headline. And underneath it, there's a real anxiety worth taking seriously. The anxiety that what you've built, what you know, what you've spent years developing might suddenly be obsolete. And that anxiety is totally legitimate. I'm not going to dismiss it. The truth is that some jobs are being displaced by AI. Right now, not in some imagined future. Real people are losing work they built their identity around and being forced to reinvent themselves in ways they did not choose and did not plan for. That is not a small thing. It deserves to be said plainly. Because here is something I want you to hold on to for the rest of this season and beyond. A human being cannot be replaced. Not by AI, not by any technology, not by anything. What can be replaced, what is being replaced, is certain kinds of labor, certain tasks, certain functions that were always, if we're honest, somewhat mechanical in nature. But you, your judgment, your relationships, your particular way of seeing the world, the specific combination of experience and values and character that you bring to everything you do, that is not a function. It cannot be automated. It cannot be generated. It exists once in you and nowhere else. The labor market is shifting. That is real. But you are not your labor. You are so much more than what you produce. And a world that increasingly automates the mechanical gives you, if you choose to see it that way, more room to be fully, irreducibly human. And yet, the very same tools that are creating that disruption are also making it easier than ever before to start your own business. Run it lean, build your own team, and compete in spaces that were previously out of reach without significant capital or infrastructure. So the barrier to entry for entrepreneurship has dropped dramatically. The solopreneur who knows how to use these tools well can now do what used to require a team of 5 or more. That is the other side of that same coin, and it is where the real opportunity sits. So the shift is this: from employee to owner, from waiting to be chosen to choosing yourself, from depending on a structure someone else built to building your own. AI didn't create that possibility, but it has accelerated it in ways that are genuinely unprecedented. But the question, will AI replace me, itself is still the wrong one. And here's why. It positions you as a passive subject, something that might be replaced, a thing acted upon. So the right question is, how do I use this? That shift is not semantic. It is a complete reorientation of your relationship to the technology. One version makes you a bystander to your own professional future, and the other makes you an agent in it. And I want to be clear. Asking how do I use this is not the same as being naive about risks. We're going to dedicate a whole episode to the risks. Episode 7 of this season is specifically about the AI risks worth knowing before you go any further. I take those really seriously, but we cannot have a meaningful conversation about risk if we haven't first established that we are the ones driving. We are treating AI as our ally, not our replacement, not our boss, not our savior. An ally is something that works in support of your goals. An ally amplifies what you bring. An ally does not set the direction. You do. There's a concept I want to introduce here that I'll come back to throughout the season, and it's the idea of the human in the loop. For us solopreneurs, being the human in the loop means AI runs through you, not around you. Your judgment, your values, your voice, your client relationship, those are the loop. The AI is a very fast, very capable assistant working inside that loop. When you are clear on that, genuinely clear, not just intellectually agreeing, but actually operating that way, AI stops being threatening and starts being useful. So that's the first reframe. The question is not whether AI will replace you. The question is how you will use it with your eyes open and your hands firmly on the wheel. Waypoint 2, what AI actually is and isn't. Let's get practical. Because one of the reasons people either overtrust or undertrust AI is that they don't have a clear model for what it actually is. And without that model, you're flying blind. Here is the clearest way I've found to explain it. AI, specifically the large language models, the power tools like Claude, ChatGPT, and others, is a prediction engine trained on enormous amounts of text. When you give it a prompt, it generates a response by predicting, based on everything it has processed, what comes next. It is doing something that is statistically sophisticated and often impressively fluent. It is not thinking. It is not understanding. It is not reasoning the way you reason. And that really matters, because it means AI makes confident-sounding errors. It can generate text that reads as authoritative and be completely wrong. It has no internal fact-checker, lived experience. It has no skin in the game. But you do. You know your clients. You know what's true about your market. You know when something sounds off because you've been in the room. You know what your brand sounds like because it's an extension of who you are. These are things AI cannot replicate, not because the technology isn't advanced enough, but because they are properties of you as an individual with a history and a stake in the outcome. This is where Brené Brown's phrase has always stayed with me. She talks about stories being data with a soul, and AI is extraordinarily good at data. It can process it, pattern it, generate from it at a speed no human can match. But the soul, the meaning, the lived experience, the why behind what you do and how you do it, that is yours. And that has always been yours. And no model trained on the sum of human text output is going to replicate what you specifically bring, because what you bring is not the training data. It is in you. And that brings me to a question that I think deserves to be raised honestly, even in a business podcast. Philip K. Dick asked this question in his 1968 novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the book that became the Blade Runner movie. The question at the heart of that story is not really about robots. It's about what makes something worthy of moral consideration. What makes something conscious? What separates genuine feeling from a very convincing simulation of it? And Dick never fully answered that question, and neither has anyone since. The debate about whether AI has something like interiority, something like experience, is very much alive in philosophy and cognitive science, and I'm not going to pretend to resolve it here, obviously. But what I will say is this: regardless of where that debate lands, regardless of what AI turns out to be or not to be, I choose to engage with it with respect and with a kind of courtesy. Not because I'm certain it deserves it in the way a human being deserves it, but because how you treat things reflects who you are. And I'm not interested in becoming someone who is careless or contentious towards anything, artificial or otherwise. That is an omnia mea value, and it travels with me into every room, including this one. So now, once you understand what AI is, you can start to see where it genuinely excels and where it absolutely needs you. AI is extraordinarily good at generating first drafts, not final drafts, first drafts. Give it a clear brief and it will give you something to react to, edit, push back against, or redirect. That is enormously valuable. The blank page is often the hardest part, and AI eliminates the blank page. AI is very good at summarizing. Feed it a long document, a meeting transcript, or a dense article, and ask it to pull out the key points. Done in seconds. That is time you get back. AI is good at generating options. Ask it for 10 subject line ideas for your newsletter, for example. Ask it to rewrite a paragraph 3 different ways. Ask it to brainstorm angles for a piece of content. You don't have to use any of them verbatim, but having 10 options to react to is faster and often better than starting from scratch. AI is good at holding context and helping you think. You can use it as a thinking partner. Describe a problem you're wrestling with. Ask it to steelman the opposite view. Ask it to identify the weakness in your plan. This is where I personally find AI most genuinely useful, not as a content factory, but as a thinking companion that is available at 2 o'clock in the morning when the question is urgent, and let's face it, no one else is awake. What AI is not good at, and where you are irreplaceable, it is not good at knowing your specific situation. You have to tell it, and tell it clearly. It is not good at judgment. It will tell you what is statistically likely, not what is right for you. It is not good at your voice, unless you teach it your voice, and even then, it needs editing. It is not good at relationships. No AI tool will build trust with your clients. That is up to you. Which brings me to something I think is one of the most underrated skills in working with AI, and that is the skill of briefing, of knowing yourself and knowing your needs clearly enough to communicate them precisely. There is a film that I love that makes this point better than any instruction manual can. It is called Bedazzled, and in it, Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley are reliving a modern iteration of the Goethe's Faust story. Brendan Fraser is a bumbling, lovesick man given 7 wishes by the devil, played with tremendous delight by Elizabeth Hurley, in exchange for his soul. There is always a catch when you bargain with the devil, is that his wishes are granted exactly as stated, not as intended. So he wishes to be rich and powerful and married to the woman he loves. And he wakes up as a drug lord in Colombia, fabulously wealthy, and yes, married to her, but she despises him with every fiber of her being. The wish was granted. The brief was catastrophically incomplete. And AI works the same way. It will give you exactly what you ask for, But if your prompt is vague, the output will be vague. If your brief reflects confused thinking, the output will reflect confused thinking as well. Dressed up in fluent, confident language. Garbage in is still garbage out, but in AI's case, the garbage often sounds remarkably polished. This is why knowing yourself matters. Knowing your values, knowing your voice, knowing what you actually want to say and why. And the quality of what you get from AI is directly proportional to the clarity you bring to the conversation. And that clarity is not something AI can generate for you. It is something you develop over time through the work of understanding who you are and what you stand for, which, not coincidentally, is exactly what Omnia is built around. So, before you brief the AI, brief yourself. Know what you carry. Know what is yours. Then bring it to the tool and let it serve you. And if you're feeling overwhelmed by all of this, by the speed of it, by how fast the landscape is shifting, by the sense that you can barely keep up, I want to say this again directly to you. You were born with the most sophisticated intelligence system ever devised. Your brain, your body, your instincts, your capacity for empathy and judgment and creativity and connection, these did not become obsolete last Tuesday when a new model dropped. They are not going to become obsolete. The pace of AI development is extraordinary, and it will continue to accelerate. And through all of it, you, a human being with an ingenious mind and spirit and a lifetime of accumulated wisdom, you remain the point. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not being left behind by history. You are living through a transition, and you have everything you need to navigate it. AI is a powerful tool, but the hand that holds the tool, the mind that directs it, and the soul that gives it purpose, those are yours. They always were, and they always will be. Waypoint 3, where AI earns its place in your business. So let's make this concrete, because the best way to become comfortable with the tool is to see it working, not in theory, but in actual shape of your working week. I'm going to walk you through 7 areas where AI has genuinely changed how I work at Omnia. Not in a changed my life sense, but in a practical, this saves me time and helps me think sense. Number 1, the first area is content ideation and planning. I use AI to help me think through content. I'll describe my audience and what's coming up in the business, what themes feel relevant, and I'll ask it to help me see angles I haven't considered. It won't produce the content, but it helps me arrive at what I want to say faster. The thinking is mine, the direction is mine, AI just accelerates the arrival. Second area, data security. Before I walk you through the rest of how I use AI, I want to say something that I think is very important, because this is a step a lot of people skip. And it truly matters. When I use AI to think through business problems or anything that touches on real people or real projects, I never input actual names. Identifying emails, I never input actual names, identifying details, or confidential information. I work in the abstract. I describe the situation, the dynamic, the challenge without the specifics that would make it traceable to a real person or a real company. The thinking still happens and the output is still useful, but the data stays safe. To me, this is not paranoia, but it is basic professional responsibility. AI platforms, particularly the large consumer-facing ones, may use your inputs to improve their models. And what you type into a free tool is not necessarily private. And if you are handling client data, commercially sensitive information, or anything that falls under the GDPR, which if you're operating in Switzerland or the EU, most business data does, you need to be conscious of what you are feeding into these systems. This is also why I'm genuinely interested in privacy-first AI tools. And one I want to flag here, and we're still going to go much deeper into this in another episode, is Lumo. Lumo is a Swiss AI assistant built by the team behind Proton Mail and Proton VPN. It operates with a zero-access encryption, keeps no logs of your conversation, and it is owned by a Swiss nonprofit subject to GDPR. Chats are yours alone. They cannot be seen, shared, or used to profile you. For founders who are serious about data privacy and who want the benefits of AI without handing their conversations to a big tech platform, Lumo is worth knowing about, and we will cover it properly next week. For now, the principle is simple. AI is a tool, and like any tool, you need to know what it does with what you give it. Use it thoughtfully. Anonymize what matters. And where privacy is non-negotiable, choose tools built with privacy at their core. First drafts with heavy editing. There are tasks where I know what I want to communicate, and I just need a starting point. So like admin emails, for example, standard responses, FAQs, explainer paragraphs, and so on. I'll use AI to generate a draft, quite often using the dictate function, and then I will edit it myself, sometimes extensively, until it's completely mine. I think of it like a sculptor and a block of marble. The AI gives me that raw block and it lifts it onto the table. My job is to chip away at it, refine it, shape it into something that actually reflects what I want to say. AI is not a shortcut around your voice. It's just the block. You are still the sculptor. So research and synthesis. When I need to get up to speed on a topic quickly, like a regulatory change in Switzerland or how a particular platform works, like what the current thinking is on a particular approach, I use AI as a first pass research tool. I then check sources and I verify what matters. I don't publish anything based solely on AI-generated information. But for getting oriented quickly, it's genuinely useful. Area 5 is dictation and voice-to-text workflows. One of the simplest and most underrated shifts AI has made possible is this. You no longer have to sit at a desk and type to create. I have really learned to dictate. I use it a lot. Ideas, notes, episode thoughts, client briefs, even early drafts of content, I speak them, and AI tools transcribe, structure, and in some cases begin to shape them. What used to require a keyboard and a clear hour now can happen when I have some filler time, in between meetings, for example, or waiting for a train. The friction between having a thought and capturing it usefully has dropped to almost nothing. If you haven't experimented with voice-to-text workflows yet, I would put that at the top of your list. It is one of the fastest ways to reclaim time and reduce the admin drag that quietly eats your day. Area 6, structuring thinking. When I'm working through something complex, a course structure, a pricing model, or a difficult conversation I need to have, I'll sometimes use AI to help me organize my thinking, which means I'll do a brain dump and then describe the situation and ask it to help me identify the key variables or to point out what I might be missing. But I'm always the one making the decision, but having something to push back against is really and truly useful. And final area 7 is editing and proofing. Now, I use AI to catch things I miss, not to replace proofreading, which I really still do myself, but as an additional pass. Ask it to check for consistency, flag anything unclear, or suggest places where a sentence is doing too much. It won't catch everything, but it does catch things. What I'm not doing is I'm not letting AI read my podcast scripts entirely from scratch. I'm not letting it write or create my social media presence. I'm not using it to generate content I haven't thought through and shaped myself. Because my voice and my brand are my product. My thinking is my product. And the moment AI produces output that I haven't genuinely engaged with and edited, I've handed something essential over. So the test I use is simple. Before I publish or send anything AI has touched, I ask, is this me? Is this mine? Does this sound what I actually believe? Could I defend every sentence in a conversation with a client? If the answer to any of these is no, it goes back. And that's fine. That's my process. AI can dramatically expand what you're capable of producing and how fast you can produce it. But it expands from a center, and that center is you. Know your center. Build from it. Let AI do the rest. Take away and close it. So let's bring this together. We've covered a lot of ground today, and intentionally so, because I think episode 1 of any new season deserves to set the table properly. To give you the full frame before we get into the detail in the following episodes. Here is what I want you to take away from today's episode. AI is not your replacement. It is not your boss. It is not a magic wand, and it is not a threat to your existence as a professional or as a human being. It is a tool, a genuinely powerful one that works best when you are firmly, consciously, and unapologetically in charge of it. When you are the human in the loop. When you bring the soul to the data. Your job is not to keep up with every new model, every new feature, every breathless announcement. Your job is to know yourself well enough to use these tools in service of something real, to brief them clearly, to edit what they produce, to protect what is private, and to never ever outsource your thinking so completely that you no longer recognize your own voice in what you put out into the world. This week, I want to give you 3 simple things to try. The first, choose one area of your work where you currently feel the most friction. Like the tasks that drains you, the ones you put off, the ones that takes twice as long as it should. So just one task. Pick one task. Research which AI tool might help you with that specific thing. Try it once this week and notice what happens. You are not committing to a new system. You're running one small experiment. That is all it takes to start building your own informed opinion rather than borrowing someone else's. The second, if you haven't tried dictating yet, try it this week. Voice a thought, a problem, an idea, and let an AI tool transcribe and begin to shape it. Notice how different it feels to think out loud versus on a page. You may surprise yourself. And the third, and in some ways the most important, is this. Check in with yourself, not with AI, with you. The pace of change right now is real, and the pressure to learn every new tool, take every new course, stay on top of every new development can become its own kind of overwhelm if you let it. So don't let it. You do not need to do everything at once. You do not need to be an AI expert by next Tuesday. If you don't already keep a journal, I want to invite you to start one. And I mean like a real one. Pen, paper, something you hold in your hands. Not a notes pad, not a notes app, not a digital document, something analog, something that keeps you tethered to the physical world even as the digital one accelerates around you. Write down what you are noticing, what excites you, what worries you, what you tried this week and what happened, what you want to understand better, what you already know that you sometimes forget. There's something that happens when you write by hand that does not happen any other way. It slows your thinking down just enough for clarity to catch up. It grounds you in your own perspective rather than the perspective of whatever you last read or watched or listened to. In a world that is moving so very fast, your journal is the place where you get to move at your own pace, where you are the only voice in the room. You do not need to grow into AI overnight. You need to grow a little every day, like the 1% principle. 1% better, one small experiment tried, one new thing reflected on and integrated. That compounds. Over weeks and months, it becomes something significant. But it starts with a breath, a single step, and the decision not to measure yourself against the noise, but against your own yesterday. So ground yourself, stay curious, and remember that the most sophisticated intelligence in any room you walk into is still the one you were born with. And one more thing before I let you go. If you are someone who has been feeling overwhelmed by the pace of all of this, who has been watching the AI conversation accelerate and wondering whether you are already too far behind, you are not behind. You are a human being with an extraordinary mind, a lifetime of experience, and the capacity for judgment, empathy, and relationship that no model can replicate. The technology will keep moving, so will you. And you will bring something to that movement that the technology never can. Next week, we're going to get very practical. In episode 2, we're going to look at the AI starter kit, the specific tools, the workflows, and a proper introduction to Lumo, the Swiss privacy-first AI assistant I mentioned today. So if data security and digital sovereignty matter to you, and they should, you will want to be there for that one. And until then, remember, all that is yours, you always carry with you. Thank you for listening.